Okay. It's already 10 past 1, and there's plenty of you in the room, so let's give it a start. My name is Michał Szynkiewicz, and I'm here to talk about Quarkus. I will be live coding a lot, so if you're like in the last rows, you may want to move a bit closer to see what I'm going to show. I will be quite fast in this presentation, and I apologize for that. Catch me anytime after it, and if I mumbled to something, through something too quickly, I'm happy to explain it later. So I'm a principal software engineer at Red Hat. I'm a member of the core Quarkus team. I work mainly on Quarkus REST clients and the Quarkus gRPC extension. And I also work on a new project called Small Rise Talk. This is client-side load balancing and service discovery. So that's it quickly about me. I'd like to know two things about you first before we get to it. So how many of you have tried Quarkus? Nice. And how many of you have used Quarkus in production? Okay, we have some hands as well. Okay. So let me start with what is Quarkus. So Quarkus is essentially a framework or an application generator for creating Java applications. There are plenty of things that you can do with Quarkus. You can go to code Quarkus.io and there's a list that you can filter, check if what you use normally is already supported. If it's missing, let us know. One of the things that make Quarkus outstanding is how quickly Quarkus applications may start, and how small amount of memory they can use. So if you compare it to a traditional Java stack, if you're still on JVM with Quarkus, you can reduce the amount of memory that you use a lot when you switch to Quarkus. But with Quarkus applications, if you stick to Quarkus extensions, you can compile every application to a native binary, and then you get application startups in tens of milliseconds, and your application will use like tens of megabytes of memory. And this is after serving some requests, not like before. We don't cheat on lazy init here. So the low startup time means that you can scale out easily if you have a wave of traffic coming. And for example, you can do serverless nicely. But the low memory footprint means that you can have a much higher density of your applications in the cloud. So you save money, basically. So this is one thing. But another thing, actually, I think the thing that we focus the most in the Quarkus team is making developers happy. So developer experience, developer joy. So I'd like to live code a bit today to show you how convenient it is to work with Quarkus. So I'll develop a big part, not everything, of a simple system, superhero fight simulation system that will look like this in the end. So there will be a UI part that I won't touch here because my UI skills are not that great. The UI part will talk via REST with the fight service that will generate random fighters for the fight and also calculate stuff to perform the fight or simulate the fight. And this fight service will in turn talk with villain service via REST. And for those of you who are from the Spring world, I'll show you how to use the Spring compatibility layer here, so you don't have to learn much new stuff when you want to switch to Quarkus. And there will be also a hero service providing random heroes for the fight, and this will expose a gRPC endpoint. Both services will use databases. So let me just get to it. If my font will be too small, just please let me know. So there are a couple ways that I could start creating a Quarkus application. One is, for example, in IntelliJ, you can generate a project and select that you want a Quarkus project, and it will let you select extensions that you want to use. Another is this code Quarkus.io that I mentioned, where we have a list of extensions, so you can select the ones that interest you and generate an application with them. Another thing is Quarkus CLI. You can install it with SDK man, for example. So you can do SDK install Quarkus, and that's it. I have it already installed, so I just use it. So I'll do Quarkus create app with extensions, Spring Web, and maybe Spring Data JPA. I will also need a JDBC driver for my database stuff, and the Spring Web is just a compatibility layer on top of what we have. So I need an engine to power it, and I will use REST Easy reactive JAX-RS. And that means, for example, that we were not vulnerable to Spring Shell, if you haven't heard of it. And let's call it villains. So I should have my application generated, so let's open it. Oh, trust it. So the first thing that we do to help you start is when you generate a Quarkus project, we, together with POM file and the structure, we generate some code examples. So right now I used Quarkus REST Easy Reactive and Spring Web, so I got two sets of two controllers and two sets of tests for them. So I'll remove the non-Spring ones and jump to the Spring stuff. So as you can see, like I think it's a normal Spring Web controller. And here, at this point, I think I'll start my application. Maybe not here, but in the console. So MVN. I can do it with MVN Quarkus dev, or I can do it with this Quarkus CLI with Quarkus dev, just like this. Okay, so it's starting. It should be up in a moment. In the meantime, I'll copy this controller to create a villains controller. And I want, according to the slide, I want an API villains here, and probably random here. And I'll copy the test as well, maybe. So villains, controller, test. Now, when I take a look at the console, I wanted here to point out two things here for you. So the first one is I added JDBC PostgreSQL to my project, and I didn't configure a data source yet, at least. So Quarkus figured out that I want to do something with the database probably, and it started a container with a database for me and configured my default data source for my project to use this container. I'll actually need to kill this application for a moment because I want to switch the HTTP port. I forgot about it, sorry. So let me cheat a bit with properties here. So I'm just doing drop and create for Hibernate here, and I'm switching the HTTP port for Quarkus because I will be developing a few services, so I don't want them to conflict. And let me start it once again. Okay. So when it's starting, I'll add my villain entity maybe. Okay, do I have it started? Almost. Yeah, it started. So what I wanted to show you with this already also is that we have this in the console. We have this test post information here, and we can press R to resume testing. So let me do this. I have two tests now, right? One for the greeting controller and one for the villains controller. So two tests should be started. As you can see, the first test run was quite slow. That's because, again, a container with Postgres was started specifically for tests, but the consecutive runs should be much faster. And with this dev mode, I can simply do a change in my code, just save it, and take a look at the results and see that now two tests are failing. Also, two tests were executed, but that's only because the villains controller still tests the greeting endpoint. So let me test API villains random instead. Okay. So and now if I change, for example, the villains controller only to do Oh, which one? Ah, sorry. Thanks a lot. I also did something else wrong, right? Because I have 2 tests failing now. API villains random. And did I change it in both places now? Yeah, sorry. My bad. So let me fix it for a second. So yeah, now I have 2 tests passing, and if I add a comma here, only 1 test will be re-executed, the one that tests the greeting controller, and this one will fail. If I fix it, again, 1 test was executed. So Quarkus analyzes which tests could be impacted by a code change that we made, and only in this continuous testing mode, in the dev mode, we'll re-execute the tests that we changed. Okay, let's get to it. So we have a villain. I will populate the database with some information. So for the dev mode and for the test mode, I can do it with adding an import SQL file in my resources. So I'll cheat a bit here and just use live templates to enter some inserts. And let's just do it. Maybe I'll first do curl to see how it works. So API villains random. I have hello spring now. Let me change it to villain. Now my tests should be failing, right? Yep. Oops. Yeah, it's not compiling even. So even if I change to new villain, my test should be failing. Yeah, it is failing because it expected hello something, and now it's a new villain. So yeah, not to waste time on tests, sorry. I will just remove this and forget about tests for the rest of the presentation. No, maybe not the rest, but yeah. I did it in the wrong place. Hello, oops. Yeah. It worked at home. So yeah. Now here, villain. And let me maybe go right away. So get random villain. I have an entity, so usually in Spring you would probably use Spring data to get something from the database. So with Quarkus you can do it. So I'll create a repository. It will be villains repository. So interface, I will annotate it with Spring repository annotation, and I will make it extend paging and sorting. That's because I will use pagination for getting a random villain. So villain and long ID. Okay, that should be it. Now I can inject it here. I can even auto-wire it here. And it will be villains repository. I could also make this field private, but then it will be slower. And I could also do, obviously, constructor injection, but yeah, it was faster to type it this way. So with this repository, I can just do repository count, right? And so I will have a count of villains. And with this, I can really simply select a random one. So random, new random, and next int smaller than count. And now I can select the random page from the pages of size 1. So repository, find all page request, I think, of this random page and size 1. And here I should have how do I do it? Oops, not this one. Yep, like that. So find first, and I'll just do get on it. Yep. So let me try it in the console again. So I got some random villain. I can even show it in a more pretty fashion this way. Okay, so we have the villain service. let me get back to the slides a bit. So I hope I showed you this dev mode with instant reload, so I didn't have to like recompile anything manually. The experience, in my opinion, is close to a scripting language. You just code and you can test it. Continuous testing, and this dev services, I showed it for Postgres, but we have it for other databases as well. We have it for Keycloak, Kafka, and a lot of stuff. To just quickly get you started. It uses test containers underneath, but you don't need to play with them manually. Blah, blah, blah. OK, so let's jump to the hero service. I will use gRPC for this. How many of you know gRPC? So a lot, but not everybody. So just like really quickly, gRPC is a binary communication protocol on top of HTTP2. So like routers, everything work well with it, but browsers don't because the fetch API isn't like doesn't support some stuff that gRPC requires. So there is a proxy required. Never mind. It's based on protocol buffers and it is contract first. So you first have to write some proto file and then you can get to it. I'll skip this and get to the hero service. OK. Maybe I'll do one last thing here. I will start my application and then again in the dev mode, but I will disable debugging because normally Quarkus starts a debugger listening for debugger on port 5000 when you start your application in the dev mode. But maybe I'll have to fix something in the next application, so I don't want to occupy this port with that. Quarkus create again, and now I will use app extensions gRPC. What else do I need? Hibernate, reactive, panache. So with gRPC we'll switch to non-blocking programming, and I don't want to block on the database, so I'll use Hibernate reactive, and Hibernate reactive panache is just an add-on on top of Hibernate reactive that makes, like, I think it's called active records kind of experience. And I also need some reactive driver for my Postgres, so I'll choose reactive PG client, I think it's called. Let's see. Do I need anything more? I'll add one more, and maybe I'll have time to explain why I did it. So I'll use vertex HTTP. This is not required, but it helps a bit in developing things. Sorry, I didn't provide the name of the application, so I got the application called Code with Quarkus. I don't want that, so let's call it Heroes. Yeah. So, Heroes. Again, with cold starts, I got some hello proto. This is this contract that I mentioned. So gRPC is contract first. This describes the gRPC communication. So at the moment we have one service that's called hello gRPC. It has one method that's called RPC, probably from remote procedure call. That's called say hello. It consumes a hello request and returns a hello reply. And these are hello request and hello reply, right? So I think it's quite straightforward. Let me maybe compile the project first. That's because from this proto file, some Java files will be generated. And before I compile it, IntelliJ thinks that I have some compilation errors in my project. Now I need to either mark the directory of generated sources as generated sources or reload the project to make IntelliJ aware of what I did. OK. Again, with properties. I forgot about it again. OK, so I switched the HTTP port to 8083, and I have this Hibernate drop and create again. OK, there's one more thing that I wanted to show you before I really start. So with REST, we used REST assured to test our endpoint. There's no REST assured for gRPC, as far as I know. So to make testing easier, what we did is you can inject a gRPC client into your test without any configuration, and if we find such situation, we'll configure the client to talk to your application. So here's an example test for Quarkus. The type of the client is an interface that we generate from the protofile. The name of the interface is the name of the service as defined in the protofile. And this interface is also the thing we used when exposing a gRPC service. So we just create an implementation of the interface, annotate it with gRPC service, and that's it. So I'll add another protofile, heroes proto. So this is how the API for getting a random hero will look like. Hero service called heroes, one method get random hero that returns a hero DTO with name, level, picture, and powers. And let me implement it. Okay, so new hero service, let's call it. And it will implement heroes. And now let's see if IntelliJ picked up what's in the generated sources. Nope. So yeah, if I do reload from disk here, I should probably have it already. Nope. It's always like that. Oh no, I'm cheating. I haven't started Quarkus dev. That's why I don't have it yet. Sorry. So ambient clean Quarkus dev maybe. So when I work with this Quarkus development goal, okay. I will have changes in protofile automatically applied and like new stuff from this generated on the fly. But I didn't start it. That's why it didn't work. Okay. So it should be starting now. This should be compiling in a moment. In the meantime, I'll create a hero DTO, and here I will cheat a lot. So hero entity, yeah. So now I have an entity. It has like a name, level, picture, some other name, and powers. It is a panache entity, so I'm getting ID for free, and I'm also getting some static methods that will ease working with it. So I also, like with this live template, I've added a find random method that uses the static methods to first count the heroes. Then I map this count to a random value between 0 and the count. And then I have, I'm selecting, again with these pages, right? I'm selecting a random hero based on this random number. So as you can see, like, in the previous servers, I was programming like normally. This was blocking code. Now we have non-blocking code. This non-blocking code scales better, so we can handle more requests. But it's at the cost of this like weird things in the code. It's a bit, yeah, it's a bit different, right? So there's a cost to that. Okay. So now, why is my classes empty? Okay. It took a while, but it's there. And I also added a toGRPC hero method because gRPC uses this classes that have builders, etc. So not to code it, I created a method that will translate the hero entity to the gRPC object right away. So hero service. Let me maybe first just create some hero just to show you with, I don't know, Batman maybe, and build it. But I cannot return it like normally. I have to return it as a uni. This gives us the possibility to do some actions that require waiting, right? If we don't return an object right away. Okay, so with that, I should be able to go to localhost, I think 8083. Yep, this is my application. And here on /q/dev, I have something that we call dev UI. So if you start a Quarkus application in the dev mode, you can enter the dev UI to see what is under the hood. So for example, we can see that we have some dev services started, namely one this time. We can change the configuration, take a look at the beans that we have in our application, but we also can see a list of the services that we have. Okay. We only have one service. That's because I forgot about the gRPC service annotation here. But now if I refresh the page, I should have it. OK, I have it. So there's this hero service, and I can play with it from the dev UI. So with gRPC, you could test it via command line as well, as I did with curl. There's a tool called grp curl. But it's like you have to install another tool. It's not that straightforward. And here we even generate some, I'll say, a stub of a message that you can send with this dev UI. So I think it's more convenient to use. So let me now actually implement the hero service. So I can do return hero find random, and let's map it to with hero to gRPC hero. Do I need anything more? I think that's it. Yep, should be it. Well, so let me actually check it here. So Quarkus was restarting. That's why I'm testing from the wrong endpoint. And now I can do, invalid argument. OK, I forgot about filling the database, and I'm using random next int from 0 to 0. That obviously fails, so I have to add some stuff to the database. So as we had with the reactive, with the standard version of Hibernate, I can create a import SQL for the reactive variant as well. And now, when the application restarts underneath, I should be able. OK, what's going on? Maybe I didn't save it. Huh. Whoa. OK, I'll just restart it, but it should work. Yeah. OK, it should work right away. Let's maybe, yeah, it's still starting. OK, started, and I got an iron fist from my database. So this is it if it comes to the hero service. So I hope, I showed you the UI. I showed I just explained the code generation, gRPC client. So I think I can go further to the fight service now. But before I do, I wanted to explain one difference between Quarkus and what, like the classic Java frameworks. On this one of the first slides, there was this comparison of used memory and startup times. And even on the JVM, this slide claimed that Quarkus works better. And that's because usually when you build your application, the build phase with Maven will just package your classes, resources, etc. into a jar or WAR file or whatever. And then when your application is started, there will be class path scanning, figuring out which bin should be injected where, and etc. And then the application will be started. While with Quarkus, we try to do as much as possible in the build time. So we do this, like, we read configuration. There are some configurations that are runtime, but some are build time only. So these we read at build time. We analyze the classes that we have. We prepare bin injection, etc. at the build time. And then we package all this information together with user classes. And and when we start the application, we have a minimized number of things to do. And also, we sometimes don't need some classes or some dependencies in the runtime. We use them in the build time only. Sorry. That makes us a great fit for Grail VM. This was actually inspired by Grail this way, right? Because with Grail VM, so the tool that we use for native compilation. Reflection needs registration and is costly, so are dynamic proxies. There are even things that are not possible with Graal. Okay, so how does it happen under the hood? We use Jandex, a library for indexing classes, methods, fields, etc., annotations, to index everything we can. Then in the build time, we use a thing that we call processors. And these processors analyze the code and prepare stuff for the runtime. And they prepare stuff from the runtime for the runtime with mostly two means. There are a few more, but basically there is bytecode generation. We have a tool, our tool for it, to make it a bit easier. It's called Gizmo. And we also use recorders. So recorders are classes that will be executed at runtime, but they're accessible for processors. And the calls that the processors make on recorders are recorded and then done at runtime. If I have time, I'll show you a simple processor in a few minutes. So let's get back to the fight service. And with the fight service, I'll also show you the generated code. I don't know if it's helpful, but that's my plan. Okay, so fights. Again, Quarkus, create, app, extension, gRPC. I will use, gRPC. I need gRPC for contacting the gRPC service, because this extension provides both the client and the service, the server, sorry. And I'll use REST client, reactive for consuming the REST endpoint from the villain service. And will I use anything more? Yes, REST easy, reactive, JAX-RS to expose a REST endpoint. So it's called fights. And I'll also add a flag to skip the code starts. So no code, I think it's called. Yep. Fights. Let me open it. So now I don't have any example code or any tests generated. I need to write everything myself. So let me create a resource class. So fights resource maybe. What is the expected path? So API fights is the expected path. So what I'm using here is JAX-RS. I don't know, how many of you have used JAX-RS or Jakarta REST? Okay, thanks. So the rest of you is using Spring Web or? Okay, so API fights, was it? Yep. And the first thing I want to do is expose the method that will get me the random fighters, right? So I will return, okay, I'll first maybe create the fighters class. Fighters. Do I have it? No, I don't have it. So let me create a villain as well. Fights, villain. And let me create a hero. Fights, hero, this one. So here I'm cheating again. So I have a name, level, picture, and powers for a hero, but I also have a from gRPC method to translate the gRPC stuff to the DTO that I want to expose via REST. Okay, and I will be doing gRPC, so I again need a proto file. I could share a jar file with a proto file inside. We support this, but here, to be fast, I'll just do heroes proto. And I'll put it here. Okay, and again, some properties. So this will be exposed on port 8082. This one I will explain later. And this one is for gRPC, because when someone adds a gRPC extension, we think that he may be planning to expose a gRPC service. So in the dev mode, we will start a gRPC server, even if there are no services, gRPC services in the code. So this is to disable it, and this one is for course. OK. So we have the heroes proto. I think I can start mvn clean Quarkus dev. I don't know if I mentioned it already, but you can also use Gradle. And I think the status of Gradle is quite good right now. OK, it doesn't compile, so get fighters, let's say. And now return null. And hero, do we have the generated sources already? Yes, we do. So I can just mark it as a directory with generated sources. OK, let's import it. Maybe I'll start with returning just an empty fighters. I will start it once again here. So I'll do curl localhost. OK, path. API fights random fighters. So I need to change the path. Path random fighters. OK, localhost, was it 8082? I think it was. API fights random fighters. What do I do? What do I get? Nothing. Did it start? OK, I see what's wrong. So yeah, there's a fighters class. It doesn't have anything. So yeah, there's a complaint here, an error that says we don't know how to serialize this stuff. So let me add a villain here and a hero here. OK, and now I should be able to get some result from it. Yes, I'll add some coloring to it. OK. So let me actually get this hero and villain from somewhere. So to talk with REST, there is a programmatic approach. You can even use Vertex client if you like, a Vertex HTTP client. But the thing that's most idiomatic for Quarkus is using microprofiler's client. And this is as simple as creating a villain client interface, annotating it with some path. It was API villains, I believe, and creating the method that we're interested in. So villain get random villain, and this villain was, I think, on the path random, right? Random. So now this client is ready to use. I could, but I would have to instantiate it programmatically. I can also ask Quarkus to instantiate it for me with register REST client. And now I'll usually pass the location of the remote endpoint with configuration, but for the sake of demo, I'll just do base URI here. And it will be HTTP, localhost, I think 8084. And this should be enough for me to use it in the fight resource. So I can inject it with REST client. It's called villain client, right? Villain client. And now I can do, instead of just returning the fighters, I can do villain client get random villain and set the villain on this in this DTO. So villain. What? Random villain. OK. So let's try it. Oh, it worked. Surprise. OK, so we have the villain. What about the hero? So the same as we did in tests, I will use gRPC client, and I will use the interface generated from the proto file for us. So heroes, and it will be hero client. And this one thing that I added here, this Quarkus gRPC client's hero client host, just says where is the host for the hero client. I'm using the default port, which is 9000 for the server side, so I don't have to specify it here. Where was it? Here. So now here I can do hero client, get random hero, Okay. Okay, but what I'm getting here is a uni, right? So I could do two things. So either I will await on it, so block my thread waiting for this to be available, or I can switch it all to be reactive. So for Quarkus, to specify that you want to have a reactive endpoint, if you use REST-easy reactive, it is enough to say that you want to return a uni, or a multi, or probably a completion stage or something like that. So I'll be returning a uni here. But now we have this, if I would do it this way, that I have a return type uni, and I take this in a non-blocking fashion, but take obtain the random villain in a blocking fashion, I will block the event loop. So yeah, but a really bad thing. I don't want that. So I can either, I could annotate it with a blocking annotation, like to override this discovery mechanism. But again, we have a blocking endpoint then, so I don't want that. But I can just modify the client to return a reactive type, so uni of villain. So now I will have a uni of villain here. I will actually change this to transform the hero DTO, the gRPC hero DTO to hero. So where is it? On item, transform hero from gRPC. And now I have two unis. So what I need to do is combine them. Combine all unis, random hero and the random villain, with a function that will take a hero and a villain and will merge them to the fighters thingy. So villain here, hero here. Okay, and that should be it. Let's try it. It worked. So we got a Purple Man as a villain and Iron Man as a hero. So we are nearly there. The only thing that's left is the API fight, and I will just, this will be the greatest cheat of today. I will use live templates for everything. So fight service, and okay, so I have a fight service. I need a fight class, so fight. Do I need anything more? I think not. I can just inject it here. Service, fight service. And I can, again, cheat with the endpoint. Okay. Okay. So let me actually try it. I think I have the UI part started already on port 8406. So as you can see, I got the fighters here. I can get a new set of fighters, and I can perform a fight. So Iron Man won with the Purple Man. Oh, I don't think Groth has any chance here. Yeah. Okay. So we've coded it. Now let's do one more thing. So I mentioned this native compilation. I wanted to show you how easy it is to compile stuff to native with Quarkus. If you have Docker on your laptop, it's just a matter of adding -d native to your mvn clean package or Gradle build. You don't need, GraalVM installed locally and stuff like that. And I'd like also, if I have time, I don't know if I will, to show you some generated classes that we do. That's why I added this magical property. This will dump me some decompiled generated classes. So let's try this. In the meantime, let's see what I have left on slides. Okay, maybe I'll first jump back to some code. So I promised a processor. So this is an example processor. This is a gRPC client processor. This is how it looks like. So there are some methods that are annotated with build steps. These are methods invoked during the build time. So like Quarkus Maven plugin or Gradle Maven plugin will call this. These methods produce and consume build items. There cannot be a cycle between these build items because it will all fail, but we have a cycle detection, thankfully. And sometimes we, for example, use recorders. So here we have a method. So gRPC clients can have interceptors. So here we have a method that discovers these interceptors and prepares some bean for runtime with the interceptors, if I remember correctly. So we have bin archive index, so some index like Yandex index for the classes that we have, and we do stuff, find stuff in these indexes, analyze things, and at the end we do init client interceptor storage on a recorder. So this will be invoked in the build time, but here the recorder will be a proxy that will just memorize what should be done on runtime, and the code that is here, this, will be invoked in the runtime. So as this is compiling, I think I can also probably already show you some generated class. Yeah, we have the compiled directory, and there is generated bytecode. And here you have, for example, the things generated for a villain client interface. So we don't do any dynamic proxy for it. This is how, for example, REST-easy, the classic REST-easy does it. There would be a dynamic proxy for the client. Here we just generate a class, and when someone calls get random villain, these things happen, right? It's still compiling, so I'll get to that in a minute. But with all that, with this framework for build steps, etc., I think you can also look at Quarkus as a toolkit for making your framework or library work with native image and work without every load, etc. So I said a bit about this native image, and I think it seems great. Like it starts very fast. It uses a really tiny amount of memory. So natural question is, are there any drawbacks? So one drawback is obviously the compilation time. It just compiled, so it took like a few minutes on a simple project, right? But there are also a few other places where the JVM works better. So for example, if you're about peak throughput from a node, then JVM would work better. If you're about reduced max latency as well, that's because on the JVM you have the JIT, the just-in-time compiler, that is able to recompile your code based on how you use it, right? It's also a bit easier to monitor JVM applications, and obviously debugging, etc., is easier with JVM. But with startup speed or memory footprint or the size of your application, the native image is a clear winner. So let me actually start this native binary to see if it really works. I will limit its XMX to 8 megs, let's say. And let's give it a start. So it started in, how long did it took? 19 milliseconds. So I'd say it's quite fast. And it should be ready to, it works, right? So let's see how much RAM does it use. PS, and this is. So it uses 38 megabytes of total RAM. So it's not heap only, it's total memory used by our application. Okay, I have a slide about extensions, but I will just skip it and maybe go to the questions. And as I go through the questions, I'll show links on how to catch us, at least some links. So we the developers and also all of users are on the Quarkus Zulib, so you can catch us there. You can add questions on GitHub discussions or obviously on Stack Overflow. This code was based loosely on Quarkus Superheroes Workshop, but it doesn't use, for example, gRPC. Our page. Now let me just, how do I do it? Oops. Okay, what happens now? So now I should be able to go to the Slido thing, right? And see the questions somehow. Okay. Okay. Where's my mouse? Sorry, guys. Slido. Folks. Sorry?
Wall. Like the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Dot slide.
Maybe I'll just show it. While.slide.do and then GeeCON 2020? 2022, yeah. Okay. Okay.
Room. Change the room in the right.
Okay.
Corner. 11.
Room 11. So what are the Quarkus advantages over Micronaut or Spring Boot was the first question. So over Spring Boot, memory usage, startup time, developer experience. I think that this would be it. Quarkus is a newer project than Spring Boot, so obviously the community of developers is smaller, but we already have a lot of companies using it in production, and these are big companies. I think Vodafone Greece was once wrote an article about the financial savings they achieved with switching to Quarkus. So yeah, I think we're quite stable. What about Micronaut? I am not that familiar with Micronaut. So yeah. Quarkus is backed by Red Hat. That's also a differentiator, probably. You can get a supported version of Quarkus if you work in a company that cares a lot about support. Oops. How many full-time devs work on Quarkus? Are there any significant contributors outside of Red Hat? I don't know the answer for the first question. How many full-time? I'd say tens probably. Our core team would be between 10 and 20, but there are teams working on extensions that work with their libraries, and there are some for example for Hibernate, etc. So yeah. Are there any significant contributors from outside Red Hat? Yes. There are even people with privileges to merge pull requests that are not from Red Hat. Red Hat is really open if it comes to open source, to managing projects like that. Does the bytecode generation with Gizmo still allows JIT optimizations at runtime? So if you work on the JVM, obviously the JVM will still optimize it at runtime. But if you compile your application to a native binary, there is no JIT there. It is all ahead of time compilation. Would Villain's repository be injectable without repository? Can you have Spring-like config registering beans? I don't know that. Sorry. What are the disadvantages from switching from Spring Boot, and whom would you not recommend Quarkus? Yeah, as I said, the size of the community is bigger for Spring Boot, for sure. I believe Quarkus is really stable, but it is a fast-paced project. So if you are about to develop an application that will not be updated for a long time, that maybe, I don't know. What are the disadvantages? Is Spring compatibility just for migration? Do you recommend using it also for new projects to have, for example, Spring Data? I think using Spring Data is fine. It is not our primary thing that we work on, improving this Spring layer. I think the intent was mainly to let you easily switch to Quarkus and get you interested without investing in learning much new stuff. But I think especially Spring Data, which is really a nice thing, is something that you can use. How does the coding with Quarkus look without Spring compatibility? So I think I showed you that on, for example, on the fight service, right? On the hero service. Can't we use workload profiling in the build time to mitigate JIT advantage? So I think I read about something like this. I don't know if it's not available in the Groll VM Enterprise Edition, but I don't know. I think it should be possible, but yeah, I don't have an answer for that. So I think that these are all questions. I'm also available, so you can come to me anytime at the conference and ask more. And with that, thank you.